The house that Secret built. I built my parents a $127,000 lake house. I pulled into the driveway and saw my father on the porch, his hands shaking violently, while a man I had never seen in my life stood beside him calmly photographing every inch of the property. The windows, the dock, the tree line, the single road leading in and out. Something felt catastrophically wrong. My name is Lieutenant Commander Charlotte Imboss. I have served the United States Navy for 12 years. I have navigated combat situations in the South China Sea. I have given orders during live crises that decided whether men lived or died. I am not a woman who panics, but standing in that driveway, watching a stranger photograph the home I built with my own sacrifice while my father trembled like a man awaiting execution, I felt something in my chest that I had not felt since my first deployment overseas. Pure, cold, terror. I cut the engine silently. 12 years of military training does not leave your body, it becomes your body. I assessed the stranger from 50 feet. Tall, well-dressed, no visible weapon at the waist, ankle or jacket. Holding his phone with practiced precision, not like a tourist but like a man completing a professional assignment. I noted 2 exits from the property. I measured the distance between myself and him. Then I walked forward with squared shoulders and a voice that has silenced rooms full of senior officers. "Can I help you?" I said. He turned and smiled. It was a smile with no warmth behind it, just teeth, just performance. "MS, Imboss," he said, not a question. He already knew exactly who I was. My father's eyes found mine across the driveway, and what I saw inside them shattered something in my heart. He was not just afraid, he was ashamed. The kind of shame that lives inside a person who believes they have destroyed something irreplaceable. "Charlotte," my father whispered, "I am so sorry." I sent the stranger away in 30 seconds flat, using a tone I reserve for hostile encounters in international waters. He left without argument. Men built on intimidation never argue with women built on discipline. They simply recalculate and retreat. Then I sat my father down at the kitchen table inside the house I had designed from blueprints and funded from 12 years of deployment salary, and I asked him to tell me everything. Every detail, every document, every phone call, every promise made and broken. What he told me across the next 2 hours did not sound like the story of a foolish man. It sounded like the story of a desperate one, and there is a profound difference between the two. My mother had been sicker than they had ever told me. The medical bills had accumulated quietly in the background of cheerful Sunday phone calls and brave reassurances that everything was fine, everything was manageable, everything was under control. My father had borrowed money, not from a bank. Banks had rejected him twice. He had borrowed from a private lender named Gerald Moss, who operated through a shell company with a warm, professional-sounding name and an interest rate that compounded like a spreading infection. Gerald Moss now claimed that my father had used the lake house, my lake house, built with my money, as collateral on that loan. He claimed to hold a signed document. He claimed the debt had grown through fees and penalties to $340,000, and he intended to seize the property. The man in the driveway had not been a tourist. He had been an appraiser preparing the groundwork for a legal takeover. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table my mother had wept over when she first saw it, and I went through every document, every letter, every receipt, every contract my father had kept in a shoebox under the bed, like a man who knew somewhere deep down that the paper trail would eventually matter. My mother sat across from me with a mug of tea she never drank, watching me the way she used to watch me study for exams as a child, with that particular blend of love and helpless worry that only mothers can produce and only daughters can feel like a weight on the chest. At 2:14 in the morning I found it. The single thread that unravels every fabricated lie is always there if you know how to look. The document Gerald Moss claimed my father had signed, the one designating the lake house as collateral, was dated 11 months ago. The lake house construction was not completed until 9 months ago. The certificate of occupancy was not issued until 8 months ago. My father had supposedly signed over collateral rights to a house that did not legally exist at the time of signing. Gerald Moss had not filed a legitimate legal claim. He had manufactured one. He was counting on 2 elderly people, one recovering from a stroke, one battling illness, to be too frightened and too exhausted to examine the paperwork carefully. He was counting on them having no one in their corner with the precision and the training to look past the intimidation and find the fraud hiding underneath it. He had made a catastrophic miscalculation. I want to tell you that I simply hired a lawyer, filed a motion, and watched the whole corrupt scheme dissolve inside a courtroom. That version of the story exists. It is clean and satisfying, and it fits neatly inside the kind of narrative where justice arrives on schedule. But Gerald Moss was not a man who operated inside clean systems, and what I discovered over the next 48 hours elevated this situation so far beyond a civil property dispute that my hands went cold when I finally understood the full picture. Gerald Moss had done this before. Not once, not twice. A retired school teacher in Virginia, a widowed farmer in Tennessee, a disabled veteran in North Carolina. Every single victim was elderly. Every single victim had recently acquired valuable property. Every single victim had been pressured through fraudulent documents into surrendering assets worth multiples of any legitimate debt. The pattern was unmistakable to someone trained to identify coordinated hostile operations. This was not opportunistic crime. This was a system. An organized, deliberate predatory machine that targeted the most vulnerable people it could find and stripped them of everything they had built. The veteran in North Carolina had tried to fight back 18 months ago. He had filed with the state attorney general. He had filed with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He had gone to local law enforcement with documentation that should have triggered an immediate investigation. Every complaint had gone silent. The kind of silence that does not happen by accident. The kind of silence that requires assistance from inside the system. Then I looked more carefully at the man who had come to photograph my parents' house, and I found something that made my blood run cold in a completely different way. He had a military background, dishonorable discharge 7 years prior. He had not photographed the house like an appraiser measuring square footage and checking roof conditions. He had photographed the perimeter, the entry points, the distance to the nearest neighbor, the single road in and out of the property. He had assessed the terrain the way a man assesses a target before an operation. Gerald Moss was not just prepared to take my parents' home through fraudulent legal documents. He was prepared to take it by force if the legal pressure failed to work. My parents were not just victims of financial fraud, they were in physical danger, and someone with law enforcement contacts was making sure the paper trail stayed cold. I picked up my phone and called Commander Reyes. If you have never served in the military, you may not fully understand what 12 years of service builds beyond rank and medals and service ribbons. It builds a network of human beings who have trusted each other with their lives in conditions that civilian life never creates. Those bonds do not dissolve when deployments end or careers change direction. They go quiet the way a radio frequency goes quiet, still there, waiting for transmission. Commander Reyes had left active service 3 years prior and now worked in federal financial crimes investigation. When I laid out the pattern of victims, the fraudulent documents, the suspicious silence surrounding every filed complaint, and the military-trained man photographing entry points and escape routes around my parents' property, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said 6 words that confirmed everything I feared. "Charlotte, this goes higher than Moss." Over the following 72 hours, working in coordination with Commander Reyes and 2 other former service members she trusted completely, I built a case file that would have satisfied any federal prosecutor. We identified 11 victims across 6 states. We traced the shell company behind Gerald Moss back through 4 layers of corporate structure to a holding entity with direct connections to a sitting county judge in Virginia who had been quietly dismissing any legal challenges filed against Moss-connected entities for 4 years running. We documented the dishonorable discharge operative and connected him to 2 previous property seizures that had been reported as voluntary sales by elderly owners who their own families insisted had been coerced. And we found the wire, buried inside a financial disclosure that Moss had filed incorrectly 3 years ago, the kind of small administrative error that most people overlook because it looks boring and technical, was a transfer that connected his operation directly to a man named Director Alan Whitfield, a senior administrator inside the very state agency responsible for investigating consumer financial fraud. Whitfield had not merely been turning a blind eye to complaints. He had been actively routing them into dead file status and alerting Moss whenever a victim showed signs of engaging legal counsel. The man responsible for protecting people like my parents from predators like Gerald Moss had been Gerald Moss's most valuable asset. I will not describe in detail the events of the 14 days that followed, except to say that federal warrants do not move slowly when the evidence is airtight, and the presenting officer has the kind of service record and credibility that Commander Reyes carried. Gerald Moss was arrested on a Tuesday morning. Director Whitfield was placed on administrative leave by Wednesday afternoon and faced formal charges by the following Monday. The dishonorable discharge operative was picked up at a rest stop in Tennessee with documentation in his vehicle, connecting him to 3 additional properties he had been assigned to assess. 11 families got their homes back. The school teacher in Virginia cried on the phone for 4 minutes straight when her lawyer called her with the news. The veteran in North Carolina sent me a handwritten letter that I keep folded in my uniform jacket. The widowed farmer in Tennessee simply said thank you twice, in a voice so quiet and exhausted, and relieved that I had to step outside to collect myself before I could respond. My father sat on the porch of the lake house, the $127,000 lake house I built for the 2 people who built me, and watched the sun go down over the water. His hands were steady. I sat beside him and my mother sat on his other side, and for a long time none of us said anything at all. Some silences are not empty. Some silences are the fullest thing you will ever feel. He turned to me eventually and said, "You didn't have to do all of that." I looked at the house, the windows I had chosen, the porch I had designed so they would have somewhere to sit in the evenings, the dock stretching out over the water where they would drink their morning coffee and watch the light change. Everything I had built for the 2 people who had always, without question or condition, believed in me. "Yes," I said. "I did. Here is what I want you to take from Charlotte Imboss's story. Predators do not only target the weak. They target the isolated. They target the people who believe that asking for help is the same thing as admitting failure. They target the parents who will endure anything before they call their children and say, 'I am in trouble and I am scared and I do not know what to do.' My parents waited 8 months before they told me the truth because they did not want to burden me. 8 months of living under the shadow of a manufactured debt they could not fight and could not pay. 8 months of a stranger's leverage sitting over the home their daughter had sacrificed to give them. If someone you love is protecting you from a truth that is destroying them, they need you to create a space where the truth can come out safely. They need you to make it clear, not once, not twice, but repeatedly and genuinely, that there is nothing they could bring to you that would make you love them less or see them as less. And if you are sitting right now inside a situation that feels too large and too shameful and too complicated to speak out loud to anyone who loves you, this is your sign. Say it out loud. Pick up the phone. Send the message. The people who love you the most are also the ones most qualified to stand in the driveway between you and whatever is coming. Some homes are built with lumber and drywall and $127,000 of hardened military salary. But the strongest thing inside any home was never the structure. It was always the people willing to fight for each other inside it. Gerald Moss took a lot of things from a lot of families. He never counted on one of them having a lieutenant commander for a daughter. He should have done his research. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose parent is sitting on a porch somewhere, hands shaking, too afraid to make the call. For more stories about strength, family, justice, and the people who never stop fighting for the ones they love, comment below. What would you have done if you pulled into that driveway?